The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the producer and those appearing in this show and do not necessarily represent the views of DerryCAM, the town of Derry, or any of its staff or affiliates. Hi, I'm Anthony Henry. Welcome back to America's Ass. We are on episode 28. I had a dentist appointment today. Hope my smile looks good. So anyway, I'm here with Joy Senecal, returning guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been on the show before, but please take a minute to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Joy Senecal. I am a Manchester resident. I am a newly elected school board member, which I'm super excited. Last time I was here, I was running. So you had me on the show talking about the election, and I am so excited to now say that I am a school board member in Manchester. And I'm excited to take office January 2nd.
I'm excited to see everyone in Manchester take office.
Absolutely.
On both sides, because I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the Republicans and Democrats get along now that it's mostly a Republican majority in the city.
Correct.
So we'll, just like last time she was on, we'll primarily be talking about local politics, so Manchester, Derry.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
I'll let you go first. Start anywhere you want.
So we talked, we talked a little bit about what's going on in comparison, as we just spoke with Manchester and Derry, what's going on with local politics, not only on school board, with aldermen, aldermatic. We have a big mayor change in Manchester coming up. I'm super excited. Jay Rouet, who's a very good friend, was just elected. And I think we are, as you said, we have a lot of amazing Republicans that were just brought into office, and I'm very excited to see the changes that are going to be made. We have 7 new aldermen, Jay, obviously Republican mayor, and I, Republican on the school board. So we have a lot of work to do, but I'm excited to see the momentum and the change that's going to take place in the next 2 years.
So we'll start with the election, because I think last time you were on, it was just the primary.
Primary, yes, which I was not in because I only had one opponent.
Yes, so now we can talk about how the general went. So on the night of the general election, I was at a town council meeting here, and I was just flipping through Facebook the whole time looking for results. Yep. And I didn't get my results from WMUR. I got it from Alderman Joe Kelly Lavasser's Facebook page, who was at all the polls, and he was updating everything as he found out. So it was before any news found out. Thus, I found out before any news. And
that was the great thing, is we have an amazing team, as we talked about earlier. This, of 15 of us, and we were constantly feeding numbers per district. And Jay was at each of the wards for about, I think he was with us for almost 2 hours. So he made it a point to be at every single ward, shaking hands and getting to know people, constituents, and that was, So, we were constantly feeding numbers, because I had a lot of clients that were like, we couldn't find you. And I was like, well, it's school board. It's kind of like at the bottom.
Yeah. And you are Ward 10, which is
I am Ward 10.
Which is West Side.
West Side, so we've got 10, 11, and 12 on the West Side. I'm up by St. A's, that area, yes.
And that was previously held by Gary Hamer.
Correct.
Who was a Democrat.
Correct.
Husband of Representative Heidi Hamer.
Correct.
So that was our only flip, I believe. I think, on the school board.
Yeah, I was out of the newly elected Republican on the school board, yes.
And the Democrats flipped one seat also on the school board, Ward 6. Carlos Gonzalez, who's technically a Republican, he retained his seat. So there is 2. One's kind of, but...
I will agree.
And on the Board of Aldermen, I thought that those elections were really exciting.
Oh, my gosh.
Go ward by ward. Ward 1, it was first time in decades that a Republican has won that ward. Chris Morgan.
Yes. Ward 1 is a very tough ward to beat.
Yeah.
In the city for both aldermen and school board. Very tough.
Especially because Kevin Kavanaugh, who was the Democrat who was running for mayor, was the alderman for Ward 1.
Correct.
And he had a lot of influence. And the Democrat who ran in Ward 1 was also the chair of the planning board or something. So very formidable, but Chris Morgan won.
Yes. He's a great guy.
Yes. Ward 2, 3, 4, 5, those are kind of downtown.
Right.
I don't think we would have won those either way just because of the demographics. But then 6, Chrissy Cantor, a former guest, won hers. Ward 7, Ross Terrio took his seat back. Ward 8, Ed Sapienza was unopposed. Ward 9, Jim Burkish won by a surprisingly large amount. He's a Democrat. Ward 10, Bill Barry retained his seat.
He did, and that was a very tough race. My friend Jamara was my running mate, and I know that was tough for Bill. Like that was, we were out and we did a lot of campaigning.
Bill Barry is used to easy elections because primarily Ward 10 is a pretty Democrat ward.
Yeah, we discovered campaigning that it's like a third like independent, Republican, and Democrat. Which is amazing, and going out and speaking to a lot of people, and part of that, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But on election day, as we're standing at the polls, and a lot of people were walking up to us with that sample ballot, going like, "We don't know," because it's a nonpartisan election. They didn't really know who was who, So it was. I definitely think that was definitely a tough run in Ward 10.
Yeah, and 11, Norm Vincent won his seat, which
he's great. He's
first
a good
time
friend.
Like Ward 1, first time in decades a Republican has won that seat. And Ward 12, I think Kelly Thomas was her name.
Yes.
She beat out Erin George Kelly. I'm surprised I remember each ward.
I know.
And as
a lot of names to remember.
And as for Jay Ruhe, he's the new mayor, which was the big one. That was the big one throughout the state that everyone was watching. Biggest city in northern New England, and a Republican has flipped it from somebody who's running for governor, Joyce Craig. So it was a big, big deal that Jay won.
Absolutely.
And it just shows that people are fed up, I think.
You nailed it. And that's what we keep, I have a lot of Democratic friends, amazing friends, and they just couldn't get behind current politics. And they would say that, they're like Democrats for a very long time, but they're like, we cannot get behind what's going on in our city. And we know if Kevin Kavanaugh gets in, that we're going to get 2 more years of what we have. And they just, you have to look at a lot of different things. We talk about the financial aspects of that. And a lot of people don't really understand. We talked to school board earlier with the $306 million phase 1 project that they're promoting, and or I should say how that impacts the residents of the city, the taxpayers.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I want to know as newly elected school board member. Let's break that down. What does that mean per family, per tax-paying family, and for how long? Let's say it's an extra $2,500 a year, but for how many years? And even $2,500 a year is a lot of money, especially right now, where a lot of people can't afford to put food on the table, gas in their tank. That's a lot of money to be asked for taxpayers. So I think we need to look at the bigger picture and break it down.
Yeah.
And that's very important right now. So I'm hoping, especially if we're talking school board, that we're able to kind of hold off on that, table this until the new year, after January 2nd.
Hopefully. On Jay's election, I door knocked for him on 2 days. I think I got 100-something doors between those 2 days. It was a lot of fun. Jay's a great guy to campaign with. He's the way he connects to people is just so amazing.
I agree.
And I think it's the main reason he won, because he knocked 40,000 total doors.
Yes.
Just door to door, how it should be done.
Right.
But on to school board now. Do you want to go first on yours, or should I go first?
You go first. We'll chat.
All right. So Derry School Board, a couple weeks ago, I remember we were talking about the new school project.
Yes.
They've presented the blueprints and how much it was expected to cost. So how they did it was that they gave the whole presentation with the blueprints, tax impacts, cost, and then everyone in the audience spoke. And then they didn't answer questions, and they scheduled another meeting for just the answers to the questions.
Which I appreciate, because I think that's one thing I see, when we do a school board meeting, that first hour is open forum, so people can come up and speak for 3 minutes. But there's no questions being asked. It's saying, okay, thank you for your time, but I would love to do a town hall style meeting. I think that's super important.
I think it's good too, but I think the way a lot of our board members conduct themselves when answering questions is really disrespectful, because they basically find ways to put people down with finesse so that they don't look like they're jerks, but they're still basically saying, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, we're the school board, which, by the way, you're a school board. You're not, you know, you're not powerful, you're a school board. You just take care of the schools. But anyway, getting into the costs, I remember touching up on this last episode, but we're going to go in depth here. The total cost of the new school in Derry will be, I believe, $71.2 million.
Now, is that elementary, middle?
Elementary.
Or is it, okay. One new elementary for the whole?
To replace the two that they want to close.
Okay.
One's already closing. A second one might close if this gets voted in March. But the tax impact is going to be $46 extra per month, which is a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And there's 34,000 people in Derry, 12 months in a year. So you do the math. It's going to be a big impact.
Right.
And I think people need to educate themselves on, you know, what is this random question below the ballot, below all the town council and school board and town moderator stuff. What's this random question? That question is whether your taxes are going to get raised or not.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because somebody has to fund it.
Yeah.
So whether you're getting, you know, a loan or a grant or whatever you know, it's at the end of the day, we still have to pay that back. And then it's not just like we talked about, like the total project for Manchester is $1.1 billion. Phase one is 306, which that was in the school board meeting on Monday, which, you know, I talked about, we talked about this and we shared it on Facebook. And that doesn't, you know, we have to pay a high percentage, obviously, on that loan as well. So that's an additional cost onto. So what does that look like long term for taxpayers? And I think that's what's really important for people to pay attention to in city politics, because it does affect them financially. So a lot of people would say, well, Joy, I don't have any kids on the school board. What do I care? It's not just your children on the school board. First of all, we want to draw in a lot of new amazing families into our cities and towns, right? The number one thing that people look at are the school district. So, and where you fall in SAU. So that's extremely important. So we want to draw in new families. And so I guess question for you guys is, are they building a new school because you have so many new residents that have come in? And they feel like your schools are kind of need to grow and...
So the original reason was that we lost student population, so they wanted to close Derry Village, which they voted to do.
Right.
But now they want to vote to close South Range, which will go on the ballot too, while simultaneously opening a middle school, an elementary school, excuse me, that's twice the size of one of them.
Correct.
Which that doesn't make any sense. I think they're just trying to give themselves something to brag about.
Well, we face that in Manchester as well. You know, we have, I think, right around, you know, deficit of about 2,200 students. And I will agree, most of our schools are 75 years old plus. Yes, they need to be refurbished. Yes, I understand that. But we talked about it, and what I like about the way your school board ran it was like that there was a very strategic plan. Here's the blueprint. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to accomplish. That's not how it is in Manchester. It was, this is what we'd like to do. This is our plan. We don't really have a plan in place, but here's the sticker cost.
Yeah.
Well, I can't get behind something. I'm very strategic in the way my mind thinks. So I'm like, okay, even if we were to say like, all right, let's break it down to smaller phases and address one school at a time. And this school is a $5 million project. And complete that project and then look at that next project. I think that would be more appealing to taxpayers than to say like, hey, $306 million is a lot. And how are we going to tackle this?
Yeah, I agree. We don't do it like Manchester does. But on the other hand, they have not presented a plan for what they're going to do if this gets voted down, which we need 66% for this to get in, which is 2/3.
Okay.
Which in a very fiscally conservative town like Derry is going to be near impossible to do unless they pull off a miracle or unless they mess with the ballots. But I think it's not going to pass. I think we're going to get screwed over because they also voted to stop giving South Range construction funding or funding for repairs, which is the school that's kind of in the middle. Because if this gets passed, South Range closes. But if it doesn't get passed, now South Range has no money, which they have not voted to give South Range any money for repairs. Like I remember a few meetings back, they were voting to give repairs on something. It was like air conditioning or heating or something like that. But they voted to give South Range nothing, which is unfair to South Range.
I agree.
I went to South Range. I know it's a good school. It doesn't deserve that.
Right.
But
Right. So maybe if it is voted down, then they maybe will put something new on the ballot or say, okay, then we have to come up with a new plan and address the issues at South Range.
But I wish they'd come up for like a plan B.
I agree.
If it didn't pass, because now they just look inept, like they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And I know some people compare it to the fire station project in Derry. If you're driving on Rockingham Road in Derry by Rite Aid, you'll see that big clearing of trees. That's where we're getting our new fire station. And I know some people are like, oh, well, they're putting a new fire station in because one of them's dilapidated and they're closing it. It's a big difference. That fire station's been in the works for almost decades.
Okay.
This is just something that the board wanted to do. It was kind of a few years ago, they were like, hey, we should get a new school. But
Right.
And do we need refurbishment or do we need this new school?
Right. I agree. There are a lot of moving parts because it's not very black and white. There's a lot of gray in there and it's the gray that's going to be the most important. Because that, as we talk about, it's that whole strategy to say, like, okay, so we think year one, this is what we're going to do. Year two, year three, like that's what our constituents want to see.
Yeah.
No, they don't just want to be have sticker shock with these oh my gosh, all this money that we're going to now be having to spend on schools, etc. Because it's not just our schools. There's other things in town and cities that need to be done as well. And it's like constantly asking taxpayers to pay more money. And in Manchester, we have a tax cap. So I'm interested to see
Derry
how that's
also
going to, right? Okay. So how do we, the aldermen will obviously have to vote for, I don't know.
Derry has a tax cap, but our big difference with Manchester is that Manchester's a city and you guys control your school board. Derry is a town. We do not control our school board.
Interesting.
So the school board, in some ways, not totally, but they have their own taxing authority in the way. Their taxes are separate from that of the town taxes,
yes.
Which means they could basically do whatever they want.
Manchester tried to do that and was voted down.
I hope Derry becomes a city. We're a very big town. We have 34,000 people. And I think mainly the schools are going to get absorbed into the town. And I think that would be a good thing, like I said, for a pretty red town like Derry. But moving to Manchester's, I guess let's do a breakdown of the plan that Manchester has, at least what we know about it.
You mean for school board?
Yes.
Like I said, it's very vague. It's, they talk about schools that they want to close, that they want to rebuild. Now there's, replacing JFK with one big school. And that's what I'm saying. There's nothing concrete. It's what we just chatted about. It's a lot of what ifs. Well, we could do this, we could do that. This is what we're thinking we want to do. I'm like, okay, we'll get something concrete in place and then have a very firm number with that. And then let's vote on. I would be okay with taxpayers voting for it. You know what I mean? Rather than just the school board. I'm like, it's okay for us to have those ideas and suggestions, but at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers that are funding it. And they should have a voice in this, in my opinion, as a taxpayer in Manchester.
In Derry, I wish that the voters got to vote on whether or not the first school got closed,
right.
Derry Village. But the school board said we don't get to do that.
Of course. Of course.
That's just how school boards are.
Yes.
And I want to remind everyone, they're just a school board. You can stand up to them.
Absolutely.
You can go and yell at them, and maybe not yell swears, but
right.
You can
be very firm in the way you feel.
You can loudly critique them. Absolutely. I'll say that. You can loudly critique them. And if they try to say, that's not nice, say First Amendment. And I voted you in. You work for me. That's what you say to them.
And that is exactly how I feel. I feel that I was elected from our constituents, not just Ward 10. Now I represent the whole city. And I want people to come to our meetings. I want to have open discussion. That's
at this point, because of your stature on the school board as the only solid Republican, you represent a whole ideology, a whole opinion.
Very much so. And that's one thing. I have a lot of teacher friends. I talk to everyone. I have a plan on going into every single school. I'd like to be in, I have Fridays off. I'd love to be in every Friday if I'm invited, and really see what's going on so I can come back to a board meeting and, you know, and be educated exactly, not just from what I hear, but what I see. And I think that's really important as school board members. We should all be. That should be part of our, you know, job as a school board member, is to have to be in our schools, whether it's once a month or whatever it is. That's the only way we're going to actually see what's going on.
I know our school board members do tour the schools regularly. Our superintendent, although there's a lot I disagree with him on, he is at every school at least once a week.
I love that. I think that's the way it should be. And I don't want to just like peruse through the school. I want to actually be sitting in a classroom, seeing what's going on, being a part of what's going on. That's, you know, I feel, you know, when I ran for this position, that's kind of how I am in life. I give everything, and I don't think we can do our job appropriately if we are really not in, you know, vested into our schools. You know, so yeah, I think that's great that your superintendent does that as well. It's important.
Yeah.
They need to, you know, students and administration and teachers need to see the faces of school board members, of, you know, that's really important. They need to feel connected.
Derry has a lot of newer school board members. 3 of them, we have 7 members on our school board. 3 of them were newly elected this year.
Okay.
One of them was the year before, another the year before that, and one of them's been there 5 years, another 20, I think.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
we have a lot of new faces. Like, we don't have a lot of long-standing people on the school board. We have one that's long-standing. And I think it's also something to note that the one person who's been on for 2 decades is the one that's opposed to the new school.
Interesting.
And opposed to the redistricting. That's a whole nother topic, redistricting. I don't know if you heard about, I don't know if I talked about this last time, but we have, right now, there's 5 elementary schools, 2 middle schools in Pinkerton, which isn't part of the district. But they voted to consolidate a little. So the elementary schools are now going to be K through 4. One of the middle schools is going to be 5 and 6, and the other 7 and 8.
Why is that?
Honestly, I don't know their reasoning behind it. They said it would save money, which... How is it
saving money just redistricting the same amount of children to different schools?
I really don't see. There's a lot of issues that were raised about it. Transportation, for example. We're going to have 5th graders on the same bus as 8th graders. And yeah, not to mention that I don't really see the point in it, because the schools are going to be more consolidated now too. Like I said, it's a consolidation plan. I think people are more upset about redistricting than the new school itself. It was a 5-2 vote on that as well, I believe.
Okay.
Supposedly a lot of towns in the area are doing it. I haven't heard of any myself. But.
No, I'm pretty connected to Goffstown. I have a lot of friends that live in Goffstown. I follow Goffstown School Board, their community page. I haven't seen that with them either. But they're dealing with the same things that we're talking about as well in their schools, and you know they pay a lot of money in taxes already. And you know, I was just following them today, and they were talking about a price increase, and it's forcing people out of the towns and cities that they love because of the increase in taxes.
Yeah,
that's going to become a huge issue for a lot of these smaller towns and our city.
Derry already has high taxes,
right?
Not just because there's the town taxes. There's the school taxes, and they get their own authority. They're probably, if this gets approved, that's going to be an extra $46 per month per person. And then we have Pinkerton, which is privately tuition, so they add their tuition into the taxes for all 6 sending towns.
Okay.
So it's a lot of money.
Yeah, so it's not just $46. You start adding it up, and it's several hundreds of dollars a month times 12.
Yeah.
Times 12.
Times 34,000.
Correct.
Because it's 34,000 people.
Correct.
Few more minutes left, so is there any other topics for Manchester?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit.
What about homelessness? I know Jay...
Oh, that's more than a 3-minute and 42-second topic.
I know Jay outlined his plan for it right at the beginning.
He was one of the only, if not the only, running for mayor in our city, because you have watched several of the debates, and he was really the only one who got up there with a concrete plan. And I say concrete, obviously, and I love that about Jay. Jay is so great with really listening to everyone. And we talk about as being nonpartisan. It is partisan. And he is so willing to cross party lines to come up with solution. And I think that was one of the big reasons, for many reasons, he was elected. But that was what a lot of people wanted to hear.
Yeah.
They want, listen, we need to, on everything, whether it's school board, aldermanic board, the mayor, we have to cross party lines if we want solution. And I think that's going to be a challenge for me. But again, I look at this as a business. And in business, you have to, even if you don't agree with somebody, you have to put that aside to come up with a great solution for whatever you're trying to achieve. And I think Jay has been amazing with that. And I'm excited to start working with him. And, January 2nd, we're all sworn in.
I think a lot of people are, even the Democrats.
I agree. I agree.
I remember when I was door knocking with them, we were at one house, and they thought we were homeless people because we were just standing outside, and he happened to be bringing the garbage out. So he was worried about that. And then when he asked Jay what his thoughts on the homeless crisis were, Jay explained it.
Yep.
And the guy said, I'm a Democrat, but I really like what you had to say.
Yes.
I'll support you.
Yes.
And Jay explained, even though he's a Republican, and he got endorsed by a lot of high-profile Republicans in the state, it didn't matter because mayors are real, you got to be the CEO.
Correct.
Yeah.
I agree.
So we are just about out of time, so feel free to give any closing statement.
Again, thank you so much for having me on. This is great. I always love chatting with you. I think it's wonderful that we can sit down and talk about our city and our towns and try to come up with a solution, or making people aware exactly what's going on. And that's always important for you and I. We talk about that, is just educating people in our city and town, because a lot of people don't pay attention to city politics. And I think this election has woke a lot of people up.
Yeah.
And they're starting to pay attention more, which I love. We post on our social media pages all the time what's going on, and I want to be a voice for our city about what's going on. So hopefully in the next election, we get a heck of a lot more people getting out to vote. I mean, we had a beautiful 62-degree day, and we still had, right around, 9,000 people-ish that voted in Manchester. So not a huge turnout. So we're hoping that, especially in 2 years, that we see more people coming out.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Derry has their town elections in March, so we don't have ours until March.
Okay.
But I remember last election we had ours on that, that big snowstorm that happened that past March? That's when our election was. And
so you had very limited number.
We had 1,000 people.
No.
It was bad. Hopefully it won't snow this time, because this is when it really matters.
Right, I see. Yeah, absolutely.
March election of next year will be one of the most important elections in the history of Derry.
Right.
And I'll leave it at that. I'm Anthony Henry.
Make sure you get out and vote.
Make sure you get out and vote. I'm Anthony Henry. This has been America's Ass. Thank you for watching.